Welcome back to Pop Goes the Stack, the show where emerging tech gets deployed directly into reality. No staging environment provided. We like risk. It's okay. I'm Lori MacVittie, and I'm here to monitor the fallout. So, we've spent the last decade getting very good at measuring things. Latency, throughput, error rates, maybe availability if we're feeling ambitious. They're all solid metrics, they're all necessary, and they're all completely inefficient once you introduce agents into the system. The thing is that once you introduce software that acts on behalf of a user or business or another system, the question shifts from is it fast to is it doing the right thing? And that's a much harder problem to measure. And since we're introducing agents, they're different than the AI that we've been working with for the last couple of years, where we started to get good at measuring that. And now we've got agents and we have to figure out how to measure that now. It's continually evolving here. So the question is, what's different? How does that impact what we measure? And just as importantly, how do we measure it? Because we know some technologies are just falling by the wayside. They're not working for what we need to do for AI. Agents are going to complicate it. So in this episode, we've invited our observability guru, Chris Hain. Hi, Chris.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
There you go. To dig into what actually matters when you're measuring agentic systems. And as with us as always is Joel, OpenClaw.
Oh boy.
Moses. Yeah, it comes back to haunt you every time.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. Lori, I too like to live dangerously.
You do. So let's kick it off. What is so different from generative AI that agents introduce some questions about what are we going to measure and how we're going to measure it now? So what's different?
Wow. Big topic. So, I mean, if generative AI and its kind of probabilistic nature, like you probably get something out of it. It's not deterministic like it used to be, right? Like I could put something in and get the same thing out every time, more or less. So yeah, generative AI kind of blew those assumptions out. I think agentic AI takes it to the whole next level because no longer is it just, one prompt and response. And what does that, produce? It's now decision chains that are based on those probabilistic responses upstream that flow all the way through the system. So like, yeah, the days of like measuring error codes and durations and having that be a good indicator of things being correct is, long past, I think.
Yeah. It strikes me that an agent is almost tailored to deliver some things that are unexpected. It's not that your agentic AI failed. Maybe
Right.
it, through its decision chain, pursued a different KPI than you thought it would, right? So maybe you're measuring the wrong thing. You're measuring what you thought the outcome was, but it figured a different path. It chained together another set of services, and you didn't expect that. So how does one get control over that? How does one start to instrument a system that charts its own future?
Well, I think the great news is we don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater in this realm. So, the way that distributed services and kind of microservice monitoring typically worked in the kind of traditional space was if you were well instrumented, you probably had tracing to see what your microservices are calling and all the interactions between them. So that technology is still really useful for these agentic chains, right? Like you can represent a step that an agent is taking as a span. So your initial query to, hey, go do this thing is the root span. And then, you've got all these child spans as it's calling tools, doing other actions, whatever it's doing. It's able to record that data as this representation that you can then reconstruct kind of if you've ever gone into the developer tools and looked at the call graph when you open a web page, you get kind of a similar view of the steps the agent's taking. And then each of those spans can be kind of decorated with additional metadata, right? So what model is it calling? How many tokens did it use? What was the exact prompt that was sent to the model to produce the action? All of these things can be attached to those spans, and you can get a very rich kind of replay of what did this agent do when I told it to, book me a flight, right?
Right.
It sounds like basically instrument whatever you can in order to to get that. And what I see as the problem is that a lot of this is dependent on the information being sent to the tool. Like if you're calling an MCP something, there's a request that comes from the agent. That call might be executed through code that was generated by the agent and therefore has no instrumentation in it whatsoever. So how do you deal with that? Is that just a, well, that's why you instrument the endpoint it's calling, or do you just go, make it up, whatever, it doesn't matter?
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, that's a good, yes. I mean, so there are SDKs. Maybe you tell the agent, you got to use this SDK that I happen to know is instrumented to do these things automatically, right? But it might not, right? It might choose not to, just ignore that piece of the puzzle. But the good news is, like, you don't have to invent any of these wheels, right? Like there are big industry-wide efforts to kind of standardize and align on conventions for not only how to track these things, but what is tracked. So when you make a agentic request, there are standards out there. There's one, OpenTelemetry is very popular in the kind of helping align everybody on both what signals should look like, but also what's inside of them. So there's this thing called semantic conventions, and there's a whole section of it that's very actively being developed around generative AI and agentic AI in particular. So this would do things like tell you specifically, when you're making a tool call, here's the structure of the thing that goes into it. It's got this attribute names, and here's how you represent the different parameters you sent into the model when you called the LLMs. So all of this is like becoming standardized in a way that could be reused across vendors and across observability tooling. So a lot of kind of the old days back 10 years ago, you'd wind up in these silos, right? Like I use Datadog or I use Splunk or whatever, and it was really hard to kind of move between them, right? You're kind of locked in. With OpenTelemetry, we kind of broke ourselves free from those chains, and then we came into this realization that, okay, it's not just enough to standardize on the transport and how you define a signal. You also need to define what the content of those metrics or traces is. How do you name, system CPU utilization? Is it CPU utilization or is it system CPU utilization? And, if it's got a host name attached to it, is that in a field called host or something different? So the same exact things will bite us in agentic AI. But the good news is we learned enough in the old world that we're kind of getting ahead of that a little bit earlier, so that, I can pick up, I can call any model from any provider. I can use any kind of framework, and there's a good chance it's already going to have some of these standards implemented, which means I can put whatever front end in front of it. I can switch things out. It just gives you a little more freedom to do what you need to do.
Joel's favorite subject, standards.
Oh, yeah. I love standards. I love creating new ones. It does strike me that as we have a pretty good handle on things semantically in the generative AI world. I think the agentic AI world is still kind of figuring out really what it needs to measure. And so some of the things that leap to mind for me that I would want to know about if I'm setting up something that does auto chaining of decisions and runs autonomously. One is I want to know how many decision loops per task, right? How long is it considering, and what length of chain is it constructing to accomplish the goal that I've set it to? Is if suddenly it goes from 5 to 12, first of all, it's more expensive. Second of all, why did it go from 5 to 12?
Right.
That seems strange. Goal misinterpretation rate. That's something that might have a measure to it. Correction loops per task. Human override frequency. How often do I need to say, whoa, slow down? Don't do that. And my favorite metric, regrets per second.
Which is closely related to the attempts to blackmail per second or
yeah. Oh no,
chain.
I wrote that prompt poorly.
Yeah.
Regret.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really all gets back to that lack of determinism, right? Like all of these things are not just signals of like, is it doing the right thing? Like it's, you have to measure a lot more, and there's a lot more room for interpretation, right? So you wouldn't probably put a thumbs up, thumbs down button and consider that telemetry for a database call or something, right? Like here you've got to like have the humans rate the interaction to some extent, and all of these things have to be accounted for in the data model. So yeah, I mean, same thing is like if it's calling just because it's working today or in one instance of the prompt doesn't mean that it's going to be working tomorrow or the next time you do the exact same thing. So having the signals of like the last time I asked this, it made 7 tool calls and spent 1,000 tokens, and being able to kind of compare that to over time how it's doing is like super useful signal that none of that really needed to exist in the old days, right?
That's a lot of data, because you're talking about a lot of textual prompts and change. This isn't something that's easily represented by here's a number, right? It's lengthy, so that
could be multimodal data, could be audio, video, etc.
I mean that's
my
going to be
picture
expensive.
is now a piece of my
that's exactly
correct. Exactly.
Like so logging data traditionally would generally be a short line that tells a human, hey, this is the spot where something is going weird. Now it's potentially a gigantic prompt and interaction, and there's all kinds of privacy and sensitive data concerns around that. So there's got to be governance in addition to what you should have been doing anyway, but probably goes a step to the next step. So all of these things are just compounding and making the world an interesting place to live in today.
Yeah, collecting metrics on semantics is interesting business. I mean, you're essentially measuring things that may not be failing technically, but they may be succeeding incorrectly.
Right.
It's a measure of correctness.
Reached the goal. Yeah,
right.
It reached the goal, but
it spent $1,000, and last time I asked it, it spent $5. Right?
Exactly.
Like all of that has to be monitored and managed.
Right, and how do you measure that? I mean, that's right, because when I guess my point in this is big data that you're having to store somewhere and sifting through that, which means it's going to lag well behind the actual execution. So there's not going to be we'll just reset. You can't stop it in real time that way, or can you? Do we need to? That's kind of where I'm thinking, like, how do we do this?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like I think the tooling, so I've been using like OpenCode and some of these other things. You mentioned OpenClaw. I don't know how well instrumented OpenClaw is, but OpenCode is very opaque. Like you can't tell what it's doing really. Like it'll tell you in the screen it's doing these things, but you don't really get a good view of how much money did I just spend or how many tokens, right? But like I said, if we start to instrument these things better and start to build the tooling around it in real time, I should have a dashboard that says, oh, that interaction, that sub-agent call spent 50 cents or 10,000 tokens. And I should be able to see that as I'm watching it do its work and monitor it in real time. On the other side is more like the enterprise or like the service backend side, where you're right. It's not, you're not going to be looking at an individual session all the time to try to just say, oh no, this is going out of whack, we got to stop that one. It's going to be more holistic, like over time the interactions are getting better or worse, they're getting more expensive, they're using more tokens or whatever it is. So it's different sets of data for different uses, but they can all kind of follow the same patterns and the same semantic conventions.
Right. And I keep hearing like frameworks, standard, ways to do this. So it needs to be instrumented. There needs to be some, standard conventions so that you can actually consistently measure over time. All good things, but that presupposes that people are using frameworks that do that, right? To build them in the first place, and that it's implemented these standards. So in the past, we've always had alternate mechanisms for collecting that data, like say eBPF in the core system, to be able to kind of extract it whether you put it in there or not. So are those kind of things going to be also part of the solution, or is that just a stopgap?
I think that's a super important part of the solution. In fact, it's like what you mentioned is like, well, yeah, I instrumented the framework or everything that I told, everything I knew about and that existed before I made the call, but then it goes and writes something that, didn't bother to instrument. eBPF is a great spot to say, oh, it's making these additional system calls that I don't expect, or it's calling out to these locations that Is it right? I don't know. So yeah, I think that kind of auto instrumentation and like the lower level system instrumented pieces are going to be increasingly, important. You
Yeah.
got, yeah.
Well, let's add a new wrinkle to this. Obviously, metrics that change over time are also an interesting source of data that you may want an agent to analyze to see if it can devise a response. So, monitoring, for example, the rise in cost for a particular system and having the agent devise a way to control those costs. So,
Mhm.
this is not just monitoring agents and agent activity. It's also that agents are going to be a tool that is used to make observability actionable. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, and it goes back to that idea of, we need to capture a lot more of like the actual session. Like a human's not going to go probably sift through a million sessions, but you could have the agent go and, look at all of these and tell me where it's going wrong and help me optimize the, whatever it is that needs to be optimized to make those interactions better, right? That's going to be a huge component of it, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, it's making sure you have the data for the agent to go and take advantage of.
And that like
And then, of course,
letting the
there's
fox and the hen, right, watch the hen house. Like, hey fox, come watch the hen
Yeah.
house. Hey agent, come watch.
a little
Like,
bit.
Hey, agent, just fix all my observability problems, please. Come on.
yeah. I mean, what if they start collaborating and between themselves, like, just
Once they
say
start
it's
faking
right.
the metrics, yeah.
Right. Yes. I mean,
Hey, the easiest
come
way to
on.
optimize this is to make the metrics look like it's optimized.
Ooh.
Oh, how do? Oh, my head
now
hurts.
we need a new security product that.
Yeah.
My
Oh.
my solution is to subtract 100 from the cost metric. Yeah, we're back in.
I need to bring the cost down by 100.
Yeah, or my solution is to turn off all instances. There,
That's
I've just zeroed out the
Oh,
costs.
that's
zero.
been
Yes.
happening.
And we laugh and we joke about this, but I mean, given some
true.
of the things we've seen, right, agents do so far, these are all plausible scenarios that we
100%,
actually,
yeah.
yeah, we need to think about them ahead of time to, figure it out. It's because
Yeah.
it is different, right? We can't just say, oh, if the performance is bad or I mean, it was so concrete before, and now we have to actually actively like think about what could this thing possibly do to try
Yeah.
and put something in place to counter it. And that's really hard for us because we're used to managing systems, not basically systems that are kind of like people.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah,
ugh.
it's not about just measuring execution success. It's actually about measuring intent alignment. Did it do
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
thing correctly, not just did it do it? And that's going to be, I bet that's going to
Yes.
be an area of intense research, and I hope standards do develop in the signals collection space for that.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think that is the key learning is that the more we can standardize early on and the less kind of entropy in all of the world out there, the easier it will be to figure those things out efficiently and make good use of these new technologies. So
Is that your takeaway for
I think it is.
the
I mean,
episode?
if there's one thing, it's get it instrumented and get it standardized into a nice format that you can rely on, right? So that for me is it.
Joel?
My takeaway is, that old screenshot that they have of the Microsoft tool where the task failed successfully. That sort of measurement is entirely possible in agentic AI, and with good reason. I think that when you're setting yourself up to imbue an agent with some power, create a service account with an attitude, basically, that the things that you monitor should not just be, is it on or is it off? Is it running? Has it completed? You actually have to measure, is it correct? And that's going to be a struggle for people, and it's going to have to be something the industry will grow into.
Awesome. I think my takeaway is mostly that, you need to be aware that this is a problem, right? The old GI Joe theory, right? Knowing is half the battle. Let's, just recognize that this is a problem, that you have to measure things differently, you have to instrument, and then you can actually go about, right, finding solutions. And they're going to be emerging just like the problems are emerging. So have a little patience, but recognize it's going to be different. It's really going to be different.
Positioning ourselves for success by making good
Yes.
choices about the things we do know. today.
Aw, that should be on a card somewhere.
I'd buy the t-shirt.
I would. I'd buy that t-shirt. All right, for that's a wrap then. That's definitely a wrap for Pop Goes the Stack this week. If the hype level dropped a few decibels today, hit subscribe because we'll keep the noise filter running.